So welcome everybody to the Superversive Literary Movement panel for Dragon Con 2020, virtual Dragon Con. And I'm going to just speak very briefly about the origin of superversiveness, and then I will turn things over to our panelists to introduce themselves and get going. So the term superversive comes, as far as I know, from the essayist Tom Simon, who has even a whole book on the subject. And I'm a little uncertain whether he actually coined it or he got it from C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, or he derived it from C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. But the idea is that if subversive is when you change things by undermining them, superversive is change by inspiring. So it's kind of the opposite of the subversive view of literature and storytelling. And in 2013, my husband and I were driving back from Balticon, and I had just heard that some other couple had started some literary movement. It might have been steampunk or something. And we were talking about how much we missed heroic stories, stories that inspired people. I was saying, couldn't we have a bunch of stories that kind of lift you out of yourself and make you think of the greater universe? And we kind of jokingly said, let's start a literary movement. And about a year and a quarter later, I started a blog called the Superversive Literary Movement blog. And I invited all sorts of writers I knew to come and speak on it. And like within a month, I got a note from Jason Rainey saying, hey, could I start a publishing company with this idea? And that, he was not the only person who had a really positive response. There were a couple of others, and some of them coming from kind of strange quarters. But that was kind of our first real step forward. I mentioned this both to say how we got going and to say that Superversive Press, which is now defunct, was never the center or the origin of the superversive writing movement. It was merely one of a number of groups that were trying to bring these ideas in. So I think without saying any more, what I will ask is for the panelists to each introduce themselves. I'm Jagi Lamplighter. I'm a writer, editor, and writing teacher. I would like each of you guys to introduce yourselves and say a little bit about either what you think superversiveness is, how you came to be involved, or whatever seems to you to fit the topic. I'll let you choose who goes first, so I don't put anybody on the spot.
As we all jump in, I guess I'll go ahead and jump in.
You go ahead, and we'll go around from there.
My name is Richard Paolinelli, and I have been writing in one form or another since the early 1980s. But as of about 2013, I got back into fiction writing. I'd say probably late 2016, early 2017 is when I got my first introduction to superversive writing. And it instantly appealed to me because this was the kind of writing I wanted to do. It was the kind of stories I want to read. And it was nice to know that the trend that I was seeing in science fiction, where it was always, everything was bad and evil, and it was, I think the term we've come up with is subversive. And it was taking all the fun out of reading science fiction for me. So when I discovered superversive, like I said, that was what I had been looking for, and it's something I've been applying to my writing ever since I was introduced to it.
Before you pass along, Richard, before we go to Declan, could you say just a word or two about what you're actually writing and what's behind you?
Oh, well, what's behind me is I'm going to move. So hopefully you can still hear me from off the side of my microphone.
We can.
But this is the planetary anthology series that Superversive Press began. I want to say back in 2018, and they got the first 5 out, which it was Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter. And then circumstances arose that Superversive had to close down. They were very nice enough to offer to any publishing company out there to just let whoever would be willing to pick it up and finish the last 6 books. I happen to have a publishing company in my little pocket over here called Tuscany Bay Books. I talked to my business partner about picking it up, and he was supportive of it. So we've been finishing it off. I think we are now down to where We've got all of the Superversive books reprinted. We've got Luna, Pluto, and Uranus has come out. Jupiter should be out here pretty soon, and then we just finish off with the last 3 by this next February. But it's a great series. It has introduced me to some great writers that I hadn't read before. It's going to work out to about 180 stories over 11 books by 90 different authors. So there is something for everybody, sci-fi, fantasy, and that, and it's all very Superversive. So I think anybody who's looking for that, you're going to find a great series right there.
Thank you. Declan, go ahead and make sure you do mention what you're writing.
Okay, fine. My name is Declan Finn. I have been writing since I was 16. I have been published in one form or another for the past seven years or so. And actually, no, 8. I have come out with 25 novels, a whole bunch of anthologies. And
you're the editor for the Luna that we just saw.
Yes, I am the editor for the Luna. I collected the lunatics. I am currently working on a series of novels called St. Tommy, NYPD, where I have a New York City police officer with the powers you would see manifesting around traditional saints by location, smelling evil. Smelling evil is useful for a homicide detective, you would think. And then I keep throwing supernatural garbage at him, starting with a possessed serial killer, because why not? St. Tommy is book 7, just hit Amazon a week or 2 ago. St. Tommy book 8 is going to hit the publisher website after the cover artist is done, and I've already written up to book 10, and books 11 and 12 are already outlined, so
You're
I keep busy.
amazingly prolific. That is just great writing. And I have only read the first 5 of those, so I'm a couple behind, but it's really nice bit of work.
I agree. Tell us how you got into Superversive.
I got into Superversive because I looked at how you described it, and it's like, isn't this called good storytelling? No, when I was growing up, the term was entertainment, and storytelling is edifying. It builds you up. It doesn't break you down. It doesn't make you want to slit your wrists, which is about half of genre fiction nowadays, it feels like. And it's like, oh look, an entire movement that emphasizes good storytelling. I'm going to hop on board and ride that train till it crashes. And I can't imagine it doing so, since, frankly, you look at some of the more popular stuff out in the past decade, and it's like, you know, Die Hard is more Superversive than some of the young adult stuff being made into films right now.
Still the best Christmas movie, right?
That's
Heck
true.
yes.
We could have a whole panel on how Superversive Die Hard is, but we better save that for another time. Go ahead and sum up in a line or two, and then maybe Hawk with.
Nope, like I said, Superversive is basically good storytelling from everything I can tell. And I'd rather take good storytelling over, oh, it's nihilistic and it subverts expectations. Thank you, I saw that movie. I want my money back.
And it doesn't just have to be science fiction fantasy either. Superversive can be in any form.
When we're done introductions, that's exactly what I want to talk about, which is what kind of stories. But Hawk, go ahead, and then we'll do Marina, and then we'll move on to talking about that.
So, hey, I'm Hawk. I've been published since the 90s in fiction. I've only been published in the last, 5 years, few years. I've only got 4 novels.
2 or 3 years.
And they're republishing because they were with Superversive, and we're republishing. I've got a couple more that are passing through the edit process, and it's slow. I'm a professional survivability expert, rocket scientist. Unfortunately, I'm running a radiation test group right now, and it takes all my time. I've had almost no time to write this last year. Thankfully, COVID gave me a few hours. Computer, it's sad, but a week where I couldn't work, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm typing. This dragon is going to kill somebody now. what got me, and I'm a Tolkien fan, and by that I don't mean, gosh, it was a good movie. I mean, I did, as Jagi will tell you, I get too many layers in my novels. I want to get politics. I want to get meaning. I want to get into how this relates to God and man and angels, and how this relates to deeper mythological structures. And Tolkien did a lot of work. Nobody, and that's not fair. Very few authors have ever gotten anywhere near the depth when they do an epic fantasy novel that Tolkien did. And I would like to think that My Broken Man tried to get into some of that depth. I don't know that I'm Tolkien-esque, but I'm trying to find how to talk about man and God and everything in a novel that doesn't say, that still remains at its heart an adventure novel where you're struggling to achieve some goal. There's still going to have to be this single path through, but I want to see all the rest of it around it. That's what it gives me. And I'm going to break in for me one more. My Pure Poison is intentionally subversing the vampire movement. Frankly, vampires are the most subversive genre. You've taken an obvious devil villain and turned him into a hero. And that's there's a million of them out there. From Laura K. Hamilton, great books. I'm not dissing any author, but you take a villain and you make him the hero of your show. And or it sets, they're not villains anymore. They're not the devil. They're the heroes. And that subverts it. It makes your hero somebody who goes out and eats people.
That's very good. Hey, could you mention just the titles of your two series? Just say like a line or two about them, and then we'll let Marina introduce herself.
Thanks. Pure Poison is my urban fantasy, and it is a vampire modern novel, and the vampires are not good guys. And the other novel, which is my Gaelic Irish fantasy, is The Broken Man, and it's The Broken Man and the Bone God. So those are my two novels, or two series. And Marina.
Go ahead, Marina. Mention what you write, and then talk a little bit about how you came to be Superversive.
Right. I write, to be brief, I write dystopias with hope. And that usually gets people's attention because they think of dystopias as something, as Declan says, slit your wrists literature. And it was part of why I was so determined to have my first novel published, and I ended up self-publishing it originally, because I wanted to write a complete story that I would want to read, and that it's pretty much still lacking in the genre because of the perception that it has to be dark and it has to be all 1984 and it has to scare people without showing that there is a way to fight back and to find a way out.
No, it's a good stuff too. You write really well.
Thank you. How I came into Superversive, I was already I kind of heard about the movement. I was already hanging around the authors a little bit, but I came into Superversive Press originally because I had a novella called The Product that was picked up when Superversive Press was just starting out, and it became one of their first official publications. It is currently in the process of being republished by Silver Empire, yay, together with my original novel, Chasing Freedom, which was actually nominated for a Dragon Award back in the day when Dragon Awards started. In all of my writing, I also have a couple of short stories out, including one in Uranus. And this is actually the theme that I enjoy to both write and read, about how we can find hope and we can find inspiration where they shouldn't really be. That's how I came into it. This is what I'm trying to produce. And this is what I'm also trying nowadays. I think it's very necessary to be able to find it in real life as well.
The perfect lead into where I'd like to go next, but I do want to just briefly mention that Marina actually grew up living through dystopia and triumphed and came, was here now with us, so she knows. She writes something, that she's been there.
Jagi, did you say what your series was?
No, I didn't. I have two series. One is Shakespeare Meets Dante. It's the Prosperous Children. It's takes place in the modern day. The premise is that Prospero never drowned his books, and now he's missing, and his daughter and his other children from the last 500 years are out there looking for him. And it's kind of half urban fantasy, half trekking through hell. And there's a lot of humor, though. It's fun.
Clearly, you do go to hell.
I go to hell. And my other series has been described as the supernatural TV show meets Narnia at Hogwarts, which I love. It's actually Fringe meets Narnia at Hogwarts with the fringy type thing, but people don't know Fringe as well anymore. I love because it does have the mood of a place like Hogwarts, but it's a very different type of story. So I prefer the at Hogwarts to like Harry Potter. And it's about a young sorceress who has a perfect memory, and she begins to discover that this allows her to remember things that other people have been forced to forget. So she begins to discover the same way we don't know about the world of magic things, there's stuff that's hidden from them, and she's trying to find it. And it's also, like what Hawk said, angels and demons and, all sorts of strange levels to it. Anyway, that's mine. But that also is a launching point for what I want to talk about is what I think was Richard first brought up, which is that it can be any genre. Some people think, Superversive, you're talking about inspiring, it has to be Pollyanna. And I think it's quite the opposite. I noticed quite a few of the Superversive authors write things that are quite dark. So I thought if each of you could talk a little bit about, looking for hope in the darkness and why you see this as, the right type of genre for heroism and, and any thoughts you have related to these from the genre side or the dark side. Sorry, Marina, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, sure. It is true that it can be found in every genre, and I've been thinking lately about some of the movies that are out there as well, and how successful nowadays successful movies, really successful with the public, a lot of the time they are just action movies that show us heroes, and they're simple stories that are not political necessarily. They're not, as I said, they're not very complicated, but it gives us someone on the screen that we can look up to and admire in a simple way. Like you said, Die Hard, and even parts of, I actually at some point made a point that Fast and Furious series in a way is subversive because it kind of covers all the points, including believing in something bigger than yourself and family and honor, and what it means to be a good person. And it's a very complicated and frankly, yes, dark world. So yes, it can be found in very different places. One example I want to give in case someone hasn't seen this movie, it's a wonderful movie called Lives of Others. And it's about a guy who has to listen in for German secret police, has to listen in to artists to basically bring them to justice. But in just listening and understanding who they are, he himself gets converted to becoming a better person, and he ends up not turning them in, which is just such a beautiful story. And as artists, I think we can especially appreciate something like that.
Could you repeat the title? That sounds wonderful.
The Lives of Others. I think it's kind of an older movie. It's maybe
It's only a few years
old or thereabouts.
I haven't watched a movie in a decade. I don't know.
Declan, you want to go next?
All right, sure. Well, actually, I think I made my points earlier with, yes, superversive storytelling is, oh, gee, here are the bad guys, here are the good guys. The good guys may not be perfect. John McClane certainly wasn't. But, he's going to stand up and he's going to save everybody, whether the LAPD likes it or not. Yippee-ki-yay. But no, frankly, anything where it's, oh, look, heroes. What a concept. We're not doing, oh, look, here's our hero. He's a serial killer named Dexter. It's like, please read the books. Don't see the TV show. It was good for a little bit, but read the books. That's my usual default setting on almost everything. Read the books. Dresden Files? Read the books. Seriously. But, no, pretty much, like I said, I've always thought Superversive is just basic traditional storytelling, where it's, I won't say it's simple, because nothing's simple. Good Lord, Tolkien isn't simple. But at the end of the day, it does become more black and white morality instead of, oh, look, here are various shades of black. Choose something. I'm not going to name any names here, George R. R. Martin. But,
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and I'm busting in for no darn good reason.
Go ahead. You
So,
go ahead.
What are stories? I mean, I'm old. I'm not expecting to look up to somebody these days and go, I want to grow up and be him. But I still do that. I want to grow up and be Thor some days, don't you? I mean, you really want to go out there and go, I can take the bad guy myself. Especially when you're talking about young people, and that gets up into 30s these days. Come on. You want to give them something to look up to. And when your choices of your heroes are mass murderer, slightly less mass murderer, and they do it in the newspapers these days. When we're talking about genres, I mean, in straight up fiction, the newspaper storylines are about tearing down institutions. How bad are the police? How bad are the priests? And I'm not saying they aren't bad people that they're talking about, but they tar and feather police instead of one cop. It's, yes, but they all vaguely knew that he existed, therefore. 35,000 cops in New York. Somebody does something wrong and all the cops are bad. But that's narrative in the modern. And a lot of modern narrative is about tearing people down, making you see how bad our heroes are. Well, yes, he is a wonderful senator and he has done all these great things, but do you know he cheated on his wife and he did this and this and this, and when he was, okay, thank you. Let's tar everybody. And yes, heroes have bad sides, but it's how you tell the story that says, I have this part that's bad and I have overcome it. Or you can say, yeah, I'm just going to keep being bad, and yeah, I did some good stuff too, but no, the bad stuff is really what I do every day. Write the story so that you're overcoming the basic primal humanness that infects everyone. Nobody is, well, no, nobody but Jesus is Jesus. We don't expect perfection or sainthood out of the normal person.
Except for Declan's character.
A rare character that you can actually walk in and go, did you do something bad yesterday? No, actually I didn't, because I'm a kind of a saint. All right, fine. That character is, I have a lot of respect there. That is a hard character to write. I have trouble not cussing regularly, and I can just see how my character would just be like, oh, wait, I'm going to have to delete the last 5 lines. So, but building characters, building up people you want to aspire to be, to me is, I want somebody to think of my characters, Tolkien characters, whatever, and say, yeah, that is how I want to grow up. I want to be the king in waiting. I want to be the something. I don't want to be that other vampire who only eats one person a week, and he's usually a bad person. Anyway, Richard?
Well, no, the thing I was going to say is that with Superversive, it's not that everything is always candy and nuts and paradise and everybody's all happy and nothing bad happens. We put our characters through some extraordinary situations. And I was reminded, listening to you, of the first sci-fi book I wrote. Is a character who is trying to save the world and winds up killing 7 billion people instead. And through circumstances, now is the only person who could save what I think it was about 1 million people left. And it's up to him. What would you do in that situation after you have ham-handedly killed most of the human race? Would that destroy you greatly, and you would just be this little ball of mush on the floor, or would you rise up and overcome the challenge that is before you and save what's left? And I mean, I put this character through all sorts of stuff that he was having to face with, and he, at the end of the day, rises up and eventually saves the human race, just not as much of it as he thought he was going to. But that's kind of the Superversive thing. We want our characters to be normal people put into an extraordinary situation and somehow finding it within themselves to come through and be the hero that we need them to be. And that to me, that's the perfect Superversive character.
I think to pick up on that, I have to mention that just as dystopia can show that there is hope for society, I think a good line of Superversive thought is redemption as a possibility for individual. And those are actually some of my best stories that I like to both read and write into my novels or novellas or whatever, where a character who has done something in the past can still overcome it. Not to say that everything is forgiven, but there is still something that even a flawed character can accomplish. And I know on Facebook and social media, there have been a lot of memes, which is how people communicate nowadays, that lists all the great biblical characters and at the same time how flawed they were, because they were all humans and they all had to overcome their human flaws and rise above them and accomplish what needed to be done at that moment. So it's also one of the great themes that's also lacking, because you see a lot of characters in movies who are like, oh, society made me this way, and now there is nothing to be done. Now I have to be a criminal. Not only to be a criminal, but also please feel pity for me and don't judge me because I had no other choice whatsoever. And it's also the wrong message that is out there that we can make counterpoints to.
Excellent point. I want to mention briefly, I have a free booklet, which hopefully DragonCon will be able to put in the comments or something, a link to, called Holy Godzilla of the Apocalypse, which is some of the original essays from the original Superversive blog. So if anybody's interested in knowing more about just the philosophy of Superversive or how to write, what the kind of ideas, it's out there and it's available. I also wanted to mention briefly, we mentioned Superversive Press, and it is no more. And we also mentioned, one or two of us mentioned that a press called Silver Empire has picked up quite a few of the Superversive Press books. And they have their own website. They have a book club, which is a quite interesting thing, which I hope will expand to other small publishers eventually, which is worth checking out. But that's a great place to look for Superversive works. And Richard, could you say the name of your company and anything for people looking for?
Yeah, Tuscany Bay Books. We've been very busy this last year putting this monster series out. So we have not picked up any new authors because just circumstances have been a little crazy and we just want to get this done. But yeah, if you have a book and you feel you're a Superversive author, then yeah, Tuscany Bay Books is a place to check out, because these are the kind of stories and authors that we want to bring into our fold. And if I can sneak in a real quick, on my website, I actually have a page called Superversive Creators, which lists a bunch of authors with links to their works. You'll find a whole bunch of blog posts that I did on the subject recently. So if you're looking for more information, I think I've got a link to Holy Godzilla also on there. So if you're looking for more info, hit my website, and there's a whole 2 pages devoted to the subject, and it's definitely worth checking out.
The other website that has information on this is called Superversive SF, and we're just in the beginning steps of kind of revamping it and putting out some regular columns there. That one of them, we just had a contest, and we won a column about fandom and family and things like that. And Slice of Light, I believe, has won the contest. So that will start.
Right.
But that also has a list of older Superversive books. I always think of C.S. Lewis as kind of the forerunner of everything what we're doing, but it has quite a few of books, that have good storytelling, solid characters. So I was going to ask, each of one of you want to recommend something, either an author writing today or two that you think you're not getting enough attention, or an older book, or a movie, that you feel meets these criteria but might be overlooked. Because I could be wrong, but I'm kind of getting the feeling that there's a bit of fatigue with the nihilist worldview going on, and people might be beginning to want to find something more. So what do you guys read, or what do you recommend? And it can be a fellow writer or something that you find inspiring.
Well, let's
Go ahead, Declan.
start with this. Start with everybody on this panel. Go to silverempire.org. I've read most of what's there. I've kind of written the rest of it, but there isn't a dud and a lot to my recollection, and I posted reviews, as many as I can. Let's see, off the top of my head, Jim Butcher, Larry Correa, John Ringo, even though he destroys the entire human race repeatedly, he's fairly subversive with heroes and such. And you want to talk about heroes that can get dark, John Ringo's your boy. But he's also got a, middle-aged suburban soccer mom who is also a warrior ninja for God in his Special Circumstances series. Daniel Humphreys, who, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, could pitch hit for John Ringo, for Jim Butcher if he wanted. Let's see. Lori Jansky does some nice sci-fi detective stuff. Her first book has come out this year. It's called Phoenix. I read it. Okay, that's all I can come up with off the top of my head. Give me a few minutes. Anyone else?
I'm
just looking at my Silver Empire bookshop. My phone isn't going to show up on here, but I'm trying to think through. Go to Silver Empire, but the people you said as well, Declan said as well. It's and it doesn't have to be every book in the genre. Sometimes, I can't tell you, sometimes you get a book and I just look for those elements in it. It's just a different way of reading it, I suppose. If I find an author that has a good, how am I going to say it? They're subversive, but sometimes it's not. I mean, I say Alistair Reynolds, I'd say he isn't really subversive, but some of the books actually have a lot of hope to them and aren't kind of being ground down under your robot apocalypse. They're coming up. I don't know. You have to just kind of dig around in somebody's work and find the one that really appeals to you.
Sounds good. Richard?
I think we pretty much touched on everybody. I don't know if we mentioned Brian Niemeyer or David Weber or Weber. How does he pronounce that?
Weber.
I thought so. Well, the single B threw me. Anyway, yeah, I mean, but there are so many up-and-coming authors. We've got one that we've got published in 2 of the anthology series, James Piles, and he's kind of a newcomer to Superversive, and I see a lot of promise in what he's written so far. So, just keep an eye on
Mr. Piles was one of my writing students.
About everybody, right?
I'm proud of him.
And some guy named John C. Wright. I think I would mention him too. Just
I think you should. Yeah, good point.
John got picked up by Silver Empire, but he also had one of his series picked up by Chris Kennedy's Theophony, I think is the name of the publisher. And Chris Kennedy also picked up Dave Halquist and Steve Johnson, who were Superversive authors. And Halquist writes science fiction, and Steve Johnson writes middle fantasy. It's World War II. The main character is a half elf American, and he's fighting vampires and demons and things in Europe. I really enjoyed that series, and I'm not normally a big MILF fan, but Marina.
Yeah, speaking of John C. Wright, I have to plug something I recently finished, which is his Pangea series. I don't know if it's been published in its entirety yet.
Yeah, that's the one that
I
came
got
out
the
today.
unedited manuscript, and the simplest way to describe it is John Carter meets John Wayne. And that's more or less all you need to know. It does get a little religious towards the very, very end, but it's so well deserved that you don't have to be religious at all to appreciate just how well the whole story miraculously comes together. Because we were talking about how a story doesn't need to be complicated to be appealing and to be serious, and it gets a little bit, it starts very, very simple and just moves on and pulls you in and just ties things up brilliantly. That's all I have to say. As far as everybody who hasn't been mentioned yet, well, as a dystopian author, I have to mention Ayn Rand, who is probably not the person you would think of unless you know her writings, because she has some brilliantly inspiring lines and passages. And I recommend that everybody should read Anthem, because everybody's talking about 1984, and this was sort of her answer to 1984, because it does show the way out, and it should have been the basis for all future dystopias rather than 1984, if I could wave a magic wand. But it's just a beautifully done story, and it's before she became too wordy and too complicated and tried to fit everything into one big volume. It's very short, and it's just a pleasure to read. As far as movies, I did mention Lives of Others. There is a wonderful little foreign movie called Divided We Fall. It's about a family who accidentally ends up hiding a Jew in their home during the Holocaust. Believe it or not, it's kind of a comedy. And it is in many ways inspirational, because these people, as I say, they're doing it accidentally. They never really wanted to do it. They get pulled into it, and they just become better people. And it's just beautiful and wonderful. And with all the, as a Jew, I'm kind of myself a little tired of the traditional Holocaust movies, but this is one you really need to see, because it's a completely different take on anything. It will leave you inspired. What else is out there?
On the subject of Jewish Superversive, I think of the movie Winter's Tale that came out a few years ago as Jewish Superversive. It's based on the book Winter's Tale, but the book I didn't really like. It had some nihilistic and other strange qualities to it. The movie, it just has kind of a light about it. And the premise is that everybody has one miracle, and when you get closer to your miracle, performing your miracle, the universe tries to help you, and the powers of darkness try to interfere. And they put it out for Valentine's Day, and it's a terrible spoiler, but I think it's worth knowing. The girl dies in the middle. So it's not a romance. That's not what the story is about, But a lot of people went in, I think, thinking it was going to be a romance, and it completely bombed. But I love that movie, and I think it has a wonderful subversive quality. It's got angels and demons. It's got all sorts of amazing things in it, and it has quite a beautiful, inspiring ending, subversive ending. So.
Yeah, I just have to mention one more author, and that's Dean Koontz. And I actually remembered about him when you brought up this idea in Winter's Tale, because in a couple of books he has this pattern of destiny tries to reassert what was meant to be, and how can we as humans kind of fight through this and come out to a better ending. And he's kind of famous for pulling happy endings out of the hat in the end. And it's good and bad, but, you know, I'm Russian. I need happy endings. I've had unhappy endings still last a lifetime, so.
You watch good movies, and it isn't hard. And a good movie has a happy ending. And so the better way I mean, that's not true. Obviously, there's plenty of movies where you end with everyone dead. But that's a rarer movie that people recommend other than the one where the heroes succeed and conquer. But it comes down to people, and people care about their families and their real bonding moments, not just the person you met, but the deep family bonds, lifetime bonds from a wife, things like that. And when people write good stories, they have to bring in more of these, because it's hard to care about, you want the audience to care, and you know how to drag them in. And that's to care about your family. You care about these things. And so in good movies and a lot of good things, they'll bring in more of these elements. It doesn't mean that the heroes aren't vampires who eat everybody. But yeah, I mean, my wife's favorite's the Underworld series, and that's about as subversive. You know, the heroes and villains are both people you're just be like, okay, we could do without those. I like to have a little better than that, but it doesn't mean they aren't good movies. But you still want to see, you know, love win out and society improve, and, you know, heroes win. It's the good stuff.
Richard, you mentioned James Pyle. I wonder if there's anyone else from the anthologies you want to mention. We mentioned earlier Declan edited Luna, and I was one of the editors on Venus, but there's a lot of people in there. I believe that A.M. Freeman got a story into every single anthology, but I think some of the other authors also have repeat appearances, don't they? Do you want to talk just a little bit about a couple of the stories from there?
Yeah. Right now, A.M. Freeman and Bocara Brumley are the leaders in the clubhouse. They've got a story in it will be all 9, because I mean we just got done with Saul, and they're both in that. So the first 9 they're definitely in. I'm still waiting to hear from the editors on Neptune and Saturn to see if they make it into all 11. And I'm a distant third with 8. So, you know, what if that's assuming I get into the last 2. Anyway, but there have been some really good ones that I've discovered. Dana Bell is somebody who I had never read before. She's got a story in Mars called Abandoned Children that, in my opinion, is the best story in the collection. And it's got Kevin J. Anderson and Chuck Dixon and a couple other award nominees in there. But Dana's story is short, but it is amazingly told from a very unexpected point of view. But to me, it was just a story that caught my eye. So I'm definitely going to be reading more of Dana's stuff. Bocara, A.M. Freeman. It's hard to go through with 90 authors and try to remember everybody and who kind of caught.
I remember in Venus that Jane Lebec, I think her name.
Yes, yeah.
Had an excellent story that we put at the end that I stop and think about sometime, you know, and it's been a couple of years now since I first read it. Declan, if you think of anyone who was and Luna had more stories than anything else. We had an immense number of stories. If you can think of 1 or 2 you want to mention that were particularly stood out to you, jump in. But I'm mentioning it just because I remember as a young person, I would pick up anthologies with the idea that I'd find new authors this way. And I think it really is a delightful way to find some of the authors. And nearly everyone that we've mentioned, not everyone, but nearly everyone we've mentioned has something in here.
Hey, B. Michael Stevens. That was the name I couldn't hit. That he leads off Pluto, so I want to get him in there in the mix as well. He's a great writer.
Yeah, he does good.
Go ahead, Declan. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I wasn't going to say anything. You know, it's like I've already mentioned John C. Wright. People already know who Jagi is, or at least should by now. You know, I'm in there. I haven't mentioned Anne Margaret Lewis yet, but she's going to be coming out from Silver Empire in the next few months anyway. So why even bother? And if you expect me to track 22 authors from an anthology that I edited over a year ago...
I just wondered if anything stood out, that was all.
Well, no, if you only just go down author lists, then Lou Antonelli, he is another Dragon Award finalist. He was nominated for Alternate History, Another Girl, Another Planet, a year or two back. And if you, just in case you haven't noticed, is there anyone in this panel who hasn't been nominated for a Dragon Award at least once?
Me.
Okay, Hawking.
We have to get you up there.
We have to work on that.
Okay, now we have the devious plan for next year.
My disadvantage was I was working on getting Immaculate Corpse nominated, and then Superversive went away, and I was pulled off of Amazon, and it's really hard to push a book that you simply cannot buy.
No, that's a problem.
We'll have to try to push him for next year.
Oh, you want authors? Adam Lane Smith, who is an acquaintance of mine, also writes...
Fantastic stuff.
Yes, he writes off-the-wall 80s action films called his Maxwell Kane series, where he describes as John Wick, only with a burrito instead of a dead puppy. You've got his... What was it?
The Powered Armor things. What is that series called?
Gideon Ira Blood Knight or something like that.
That was fantastic. That was a heck of a fun read.
Yes, it's dystopia with demons and power armor. And you have Making Peace, which is basically a weaponized Dungeons and Dragons campaign, only in an urban fantasy environment with half sci-fi thrown in. And frankly, I think that's probably his best work. But I'm biased. It was one of the first things of his I read.
It was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just off the top of my head. So
we should probably also mention that Russell Newquist, the publisher for Silver Empire, is also a writer. And he also writes, we've been talking about having a group of things, which might include some Declan, some John Wright, possibly some of mine, and calling it not Your Parents' Christian Fantasy. Because it's got this sense of something, something greater and above, but none of the kind of kid gloves that sometimes goes with what they call Christian fantasy.
No, Christian fiction is a slur, and frankly, I'm Catholic, so roll with it. And my general joke is I don't have competition in Christian fantasy. Tolkien and Lewis are dead, but then it's like, okay, then there's Jagi, then there's John C. Wright, and here's the metric tonnage of stuff they've written. So, I can't get away with that line. But no, the kind of Christian fantasy that Russell Newquist writes involve, the Apache attack helicopter versus the dragon. I have Vatican ninjas, the only good vampires I have go to confession, and yes, it hurts. End quote. I have to use that line more often. My Saint Tommy series involves him getting shot at every few chapters, and he's killed more than his few share of people, but they were all bad. And they were busy trying to kill him at the time.
Yeah, he's been killed a few times, right?
Yeah. That's
Declan and the rest of us who read his books have been mildly creeped out because he keeps picking rather hard-hitting groups for villains, and then they're in the news. It's like, Declan, are you predicting this? Are you making it happen?
Yeah.
But if you're following the modern things, it's enjoyable to see Tommy shooting them up.
Yes, and it's like, no, they weren't ripped from the headlines. They came before the headlines. Stop it, headlines!
Declan is trying to outdo John Ringo at predicting stuff.
Let's not have a zombie apocalypse either, okay?
No, I don't.
Hey, Declan, my entry into Christian fiction or fantasy, however you want to do it, I've got all the gods on Mars. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, guess you can have Olympian Superversive.
Yeah, I get. Maybe that's. I'm the pioneer of a new genre. Olympian Superversive. There we go.
I like it. For my Venus story, we were told that you could put the planet or the god, and I managed to get the planet and the goddess. And for Mercury, I got the planet, the god, and the metal into my story. So I approve of Olympian Superversive.
That was the fun part of that series, is to see how everybody would take their story and incorporate either the planet or the god or the lore or all of it into one glorious mix and then come out with these incredible stories. I mean,
I think you're right.
And there are stories. I say we have about 180. We could have done 250, 260, but you can't make these books that are, this wide. And, you have to cut something.
They can't all be Luna.
That level or that area, if somebody wants to go in and have fun, it is limitless what you can do.
It'd be fun to have some spin-off novels. What it would be fun to have.
So many
Can you guys speak each briefly, because I think kind of getting slow on time, about what you're working on or what you'd like to be working on? I mean, if you're able to work right now or not aside, what kind of things are you working towards in the future?
Oh God, I have to go first. Okay.
Yep.
Like I said before, I'm still working on the St. Tommy NYPD series. That's got another 2 books to be written, and another 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 5 books to be published. I've got a space opera series of 3 or 4 books of which are drafted, and about 8 are outlined or half written. I've got my vampire spin-offs, my vampire series that I want to continue in a spin-off side section. So, I can continue fighting vampires with Throwing Stars of David. Oh, yes, I'm currently working on another anthology, yet again. I don't know how I keep getting roped into these things, where the entire premise is, and I quote, punching demons. And that one's already in the process of being cobbled together, and I think that's more than enough for right now.
Excellent. Marina?
Yeah, I basically stopped writing for about a year just because of all the things that were going on. I can't even blame 2020 on it. Things were happening before 2020. Not all bad, just busy. So yeah, I have one young adult ghost story that I can't bring myself to finish. It's like the last 5 minutes on the treadmill. The last 25% of a novel is always the hardest, but I'll get there someday. And I just recently started, I wanted just to write a short story that was kind of a retelling of an old Russian fairy tale, and now it's evolving into a fantasy utopia, not utopia, dystopia. So I will see what comes out of it. I have like 10,000 words in right now, playing around with it, which is a lot of fun.
That sounds great. Hawkins?
Well, I've got the novel you've edited for me. I've grown it to about 85,000 words right now. It's almost about ready to come out. It's called Castle Brave, and it's about a group of elven rangers who are rescuing a dragon from a castle.
It's also mill fantasy. I also enjoyed that one.
And if you ask, and I worked with the military for many years, how can they do that? That's just magic. Yeah, it's just magic this time. So why do the guns shoot 100 times? It's just magic. Other than that, yeah, I'm actually publishing a couple of papers this year in RET, radiation effects technology. I've got a team and it's a lot of work, but I am hoping to get, one of my beta readers has decided she wants to write. And so we are working on an elven romance novel, and I am working on it, and she's doing some great stuff, and I'm trying to help without being, no, let's do it my way. And so I'm trying to kind of edge into this editor position that I'm sure you've done a million times, Jagi, and I've done this time. So I'm learning.
That's interesting. Excellent. Richard, can you mention both what you're doing personally and maybe one or two things you're going to have coming out from your publishing company?
Well, we're going to finish off the series. We still have Jupiter comes out at the end of September, Sol in November, Neptune right before Christmas, and then Saturn will come out on Groundhog Day 2021. And if I wake up and we're starting the series all over again, I'm going to go full Bill Murray on somebody. For me personally, this is the short answer. That's all my projects. But the long form is I'm writing a Star Trek fan fiction that I post a new chapter every week. I'm putting stuff up on my website now that's for premium members. It's like short stories and reviews, stuff like that. But book-wise, I had to take the last year or so off to focus on getting this all done. And I'm starting to get back to the books I want to write, which includes John C. Wright's Star Quest universe. I've got that book coming, and I've got to complete a steampunk science fiction series I've been writing with my grandson called the Timeless series. And I've got 4 books of that to go. And I'm hoping to get all that done by the end of this year. And then I'll probably just drop dead, Oh,
no, keep going. I should say that editing the first Star Quest is one of the things that I have on for the fall. We're hoping the very first book will come out in November. And for those who don't know, that's the same way that Nick Cole, Jason Anpet's Galaxy's Edge is Star Wars, not Star Wars. Star Quest is Star Wars, not Star Wars, and it's John C. Wright is the first author, but there's other people, including Richard here, who are going to be writing in the background, and looking forward to that. And
going to be more Star Wars than Star Wars at current rate of speed.
We hope so. For myself, I'm working on book 6 in my series, but I'm also working. I have this short story that I've tried to write for 3 different anthologies, and none of them were quite right. And I think it'll go into the Punching Demons one. So it's called Who Rules the World, and I'm really hoping I can get it 4 times the charm with this short story. It has the character Cornelius from my Prospero stories, who was the head of the Illuminati in his world background. And he's kind of, by the end of the book series, his worldview has been all shaken up. So he's taking a short vacation, and they have to convince him to come back because the demons have taken over. So it's something like that. Anyway, I think we're probably getting close to being out of time, but thank you guys so much. This is so much fun to talk about. I hope that the viewers will enjoy it, and we'll find some of these good books out there. And Richard's website is really a good resource for finding them. And as we said, go ahead and read the Planetary series, and then chase down the authors whose short stories you like. And Marina, Declan, Hawk, and Richard all have great stuff out there. So thank you guys so much.
Well, thanks for having us on.
Thank you.